Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm Dave Niven, and this is the Social World Podcast. It's thoughts on the social world if you go to Google. I'm very pleased to have you back again. And that theme is the theme of the day. I have got somebody here that I interviewed 2 years ago. It's unbelievable that it's gone that long. Larry Cameron. Now, Larry is somebody who is steeped in protecting the vulnerable, protecting children, identifying where trafficking takes place, training people, and also now he's changed, and I'm going to ask him how he's changed into which particular company he's formed and how that goes about things. Larry, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, David. Glad to be back.
Okay, now I see that you've now formed your own company. It's Paradigm Intelligence, and you're the president. And you have got quite a track record now, so I presume you're really focusing on stuff that you've always wanted to do. Could you tell us a little bit about Paradigm?
Yeah, so Paradigm, it's an intelligence company. We work with various law enforcement. We trained about 7,000 in the past 3 years. We spoke at about 160 conferences. Also trainer for Interpol, the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Forces, and spoke at the United Nations, I think around 4 times already, and worked with them on some other things.
So what do you
we
do in the
essentially, we do,
afternoons?
pardon me?
I'm joking. I'm saying, what do you do in the afternoons?
Sleep.
What a
Yeah,
schedule. That's incredible. All right. Elaborate on it a bit for us, would you? And tell us sort of what the work it sort of involves as well as how you actually develop it and distribute it.
working day, it's kind of fluctuates. So I do still do pro bono cases for some missing children. I worked on a few last night, actually. We average about 4 recoveries per week now. So
Really?
it's not
That's,
massive, but
no, but
it's
that's
a
a
step
very
in the right direction.
significant thing still.
Yeah. Yeah, so we do a normal day. It consists of different stuff like a blockchain forensics investigations. There's a lot of people that get hacked, a lot of people that get scammed, a lot of fraud in the world there.
Hmm.
We also do digital forensics. We do a lot of cyber investigations.
Okay.
So going after different sites or entities, tracking people. We also do different like dark web intelligence. If there's some stuff going on the dark web and someone needs help targeting, then they'd reach out to us.
Yeah,
It's more the high technical stuff. So
I
that's
remember
why,
you mentioning the dark web stuff before. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, so I created an event called the Dark Webathon. We had last one, we had about 160 people that got certified in blockchain forensics. Plus, we had an open source intelligence and also a pig butchering lightning round.
You're going to
So
have to
pig
explain.
butchering,
You're going to have to explain one or two things of this side of the pond. The pig butchering one.
yeah, pig butchering. It's kind of evolved from the old romance scams, investment scams, cryptocurrency scams. I do have a presentation I'll show you. It won't be public, but it's very interesting. Uh, right now, the victims are also the ones scamming. So people will traffic these people, labor trafficking, sex trafficking, even organ trafficking, so that they can scam other people. So you'll see different call center type things set up, but each desk will have like 20 phones, right?
Yeah.
So they're constantly going, making these profiles, trying to scam people, but they're the ones being trafficked. So
What a
it's kind of a twist to
complication.
the situation.
Yeah. It's really complicated. It's quite convoluted in some ways. So, I mean, these
Yeah,
people are experiencing, if you like, both ends of the drama.
yeah. Some of them actually, there were some women that wouldn't actually do the scamming.
Okay.
So they put them into these karaoke bars to be sex trafficked. And then some of them that didn't want to do that, they would actually traffic their organs. There's a lot of torture. So they had cattle prods and they were zapping them and they were beating them. Their whole body was bruised.
And I mean, where does this all happen? How far and wide do you get involved?
So there was a case in Cambodia. There was about 100,000 victims there. And there was, I think,
100,000.
around 100 to 120,000 victims in Myanmar. We started seeing it as close as Europe, Australia, and also North America. It's starting. So it's spreading out right now just because it's catching on, the next best way to scam people. There's about $80 billion in a few years.
So these people who are victims themselves then would be kind of placed into positions where they scam other people.
Yes. Or risk of being tortured or killed.
Yeah, under duress. Yeah, I get it. So can I just take you back for a moment or two, just to make it a little more kind of personal? You mentioned you did about 4 what you called recoveries
Yeah.
a week. Could you just describe a recovery and what goes into it and what happens? Would you mind?
Yeah, so if you look at social media, you'll probably see all these missing children posters, or on the news or in newspapers all around the place. You'll see that there's kids missing all over the world.
Yeah.
Well, this is what we assist with. So it could be sometimes the parents come out to us, sometimes we just see the posts, sometimes it could be law enforcement that needs help. Or we might get a report from the National Center Missing Exploited Children that's brought to us through law enforcement. So they will, basically give us all the information so that we can start targeting. And, it could be, 5, 6, 7 investigations a week we'll touch on just so that we can do our part. But, at least 4 of these get recovered. I've been averaging.
Which I think that sounds remarkably successful. I mean, but you felt that was only a small number, really, didn't you?
Now, this is the thing. I mean, we need to do the for-profit model in order to fund these non-profit investigations.
What
It's really,
ages of people are you
it was
talking
stressful
about?
being a non-profit where you had to fundraise your own salary,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Okay, what ages of people were you
Takes your
talking
time
about?
away from the actual mission at hand.
Well, right. Are they young people mainly? The children obviously are
Can you
children,
repeat
but I
that?
mean, sorry, go on. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you repeat that?
I'm saying, I was wondering what ages of
You
people.
just cut out.
Oh, did I? Sorry. I wondered. Well, let me stop it a sec.
Oh, age?
Okay, what ages of people are you managing to recover? What ages do you tend to kind of come across mainly? Is it all children or is it mainly other vulnerable adults? Is it?
There are some vulnerable adults, but again, time is of the essence. We don't have a lot of time. We need more staff to be able to do this more often. But generally, from 8 years old to about, well, could be 17, 18.
Yeah.
Even though they're 18, we still also look for those. Or some of them are like, up to 40 or more. But generally, I find they're around at least 12 to 14, 15. Those are the main ages we come across.
Right. You mentioned to me that you're building this company of yours, obviously using the massive networking that you've accumulated over the years that you've been involved in this business. You've got some interns at the moment and you do a lot of training, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah. So one of my first engagements was with Fort Liberty or Fort Bragg. They do the special
Oh,
operations.
yeah.
I think it was the first special operations base globally. They actually have 2 Starbucks. But I went there and I trained the PSYOPs, the psychological operations, and various forms of blockchain forensics or open source intelligence or blockchain forensics. Did I say that? Dark web intelligence as well. Those are the main topics that I train on, the cyber aspect.
All right. I think it's good at this point that I should mention that at the end of the podcast, on the front page, the texts of the front page of this podcast, I will ask you to give me as much as you like in terms of linkage or in terms of places that people can go and link in to see some of your work or to see ideas that are happening, events that are coming up. Anything you want, I will put on as a link. at the end of the conversation. Okay.
I appreciate that, David.
All right. So let's get into it a little bit then. I mean, I would think that if you come across all these traumatized situations day after day after day, you've got to be incredibly resilient yourself. I mean, there must take quite a toll on yourself, all of this, and the people you work with.
Uh, yeah, I find I carry it well.
Hmm.
It's years and years of trauma. You kind of get used to it. But I just started actually getting therapy from which was donated by the National Child Protection Task Force.
Right. Okay.
Some of my coworkers, they go twice a month, and well, they used to, and they used to tell me, Larry, you should do this. And I was just didn't have the time at first, but after some personal stuff that happened in my life around December, I started getting some therapy, and it has done a lot for me.
Good. Well, I mean, I'm amazed all the work you've done and all the things you've been involved with, that you're not horizontal on the floor rather than kind of talking to me still. It just the work is so stressful, I imagine.
Yeah, it can get stressful, especially when sometimes stuff happens and you're no longer needed to investigate, or
Mm.
there's some bad cases and there's some good cases. I mostly look forward to the good cases because it gives you that adrenaline rush that keeps you going.
Okay. Well, listen, what's your own take then worldwide on the various problems? I mean, trafficking, slavery, abuse, it's all just titles of ways that people abuse other people. Um,
Hmm.
is it any way coming under any kind of control, or is it just exponentially getting bigger and bigger and bigger?
Well, you would think that it's, based on the headlines, it's getting worse and worse.
Hmm.
But, in reality, it's just we are getting better at detecting it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, some of the statistics here in Canada, you hear them and they're kind of surprising. But then when you think about it, they're basing those numbers off of known statistics, which is
Hmm.
sometimes 1% of what's actually going on in the background. That's what people need to realize.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked to people in other parts of the discipline that you get involved with, and the numbers do vary hugely, even with very experienced people. Some say several million, some say differently. I talked to the missing kids in Europe, and they say 250,000 kids a year go missing in Europe. Others say 500,000. It's so difficult to try and absolutely pin down what the range of the problem is. Do you find data collection is a huge problem?
Yeah, it is because we don't know the breadth of the issue. I mean, they say through the ILO, International Language Organization, the
Yeah.
stats are about, was it 150 million,
Uh, yeah, I know. I mean, it's just
like
mind-boggling
globally?
numbers.
Yeah.
So, what's encouraging you? Let's start with the good stuff. All right. What's encouraging you about what you see out there?
Uh, I'd say that we're getting better
Hmm.
at finding these kids. But
Most,
again, I mean, we're not going to rest our way out of the issue. There needs to
no.
be more prevention. So we're going to need to start in training the kids from when they go to school in order to spot these issues and
Yeah.
kind of take care of it early.
It seems to me, I've been doing podcasts. Well, this is like I'm now in the 11th year of this podcast, but in the last few years, I've done quite a bit to do with the kind of work that you're involved with. And it seems to me that there's so many different organizations. Do you think that it's too disparate, or should there be more joined up thinking between organizations, or does it just work because it works?
I think that there's too many orgs just popping out of nowhere. There's not enough funding. There's
Yeah.
the big orgs, which have so much overhead that, I've done more in a year of no budget than they've done in 5 years with a massive millions-dollar budget.
Interesting. Interesting. So I mean, is there any moves afoot that you can see internationally, whether it's the UN or other organizations, trying to pull things under a more controlled umbrella?
Excuse me. I don't really see too much going on. It's just more organizations popping up left, right, and center.
Mm,
I find that like critical response, the different crisis responses, they're starting to get a lot better.
yeah.
So we did ops in pretty much everywhere. There was Afghanistan, there was the Gaza response, there was the
Mm,
Ukraine response, now there's Haiti, there was Jamaica. I mean, we're starting to do responses in all these countries that are having, tough times, but we need to start focusing on ourselves a little bit more. You know what I mean?
I do. I do
I
because
mean,
it starts at home, doesn't it?
yeah, I mean, having a world government doesn't seem like a bad move at this point. Some people will yell conspiracy theory, but I mean, without this centralized government, for instance, working on that one of those pig butchering cases,
Okay.
and well, the military of Myanmar, they took over their government so that they could open up this $15 billion compound called KK Park in Myanmar.
Okay.
So when these type of situations happen, China is protecting them, but these compounds are all for these Chinese gamblers. But China doesn't agree with the gambling. They want to keep the money inside China. So when you have these dictators, specifying, who
Right.
they're protecting and who they're bullying, then it kind of gets out of hand. And the world's not aligned right now. And
No.
until the world gets aligned in some, central goals, then I don't think anything's going to get better.
The world is lurching, it seems to me, between kind of dictators and liberal democracies wringing their hands and lack of funding and crisis this, crisis that. And I would
I
guess,
mean, really, in a
hmm,
capitalist society, I mean, that's all there is money. But what if, we weren't capitalist?
hmm,
What if
well,
we could just, a podcast for social good?
well, join the club. In my tiny little way, for the last 11 years, I have not monetized this podcast. I pay for it myself, and I just
Right.
enjoy the idea. We've done 100, and you're the 163rd program that I've done. And I could easily do 163 more with all the stuff
Yeah.
that I get. And I'm only just scratching the surface talking to experienced people like you. I mean, it just
Hmm.
sometimes, to be honest, Larry, seems mind-boggling.
Yeah. I mean, if we reduced a lot of the competition and we worked together and, everybody had a home,
Mm,
if
mm,
everybody had a home that was a human right, then there'd be no homelessness. I mean, if everyone grew their own food and shared, then there
mm.
wouldn't be no hunger. Those are just small little goals. I mean, there's proof of concepts done in Cambodia where they gave a universal benefit. I think it was about $3 a day. So
Yeah.
what that did is prevented the community from selling their kids. Now, since they're not selling their kids, they also added some advanced training to the teachers. So these teachers, they learned concepts like AI, machine learning, robotics, etc. So what happened there is, they started teaching the kids these advanced concepts. They started getting scholarships. They started supporting their parents. And then after, I think it was 2 or 3 years, they stopped accepting that universal benefit. They
Um,
felt shame in receiving it because they were fine. Okay. So the kids were now taking care of their parents. The community worked together. The crime rate dropped 95%. And these are just
Yeah,
two of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals brought out by the United Nations.
yeah.
I mean, there's just little things you can change in a community to make them 100 times better.
Oh, I do. I get it. I get it. And I really wish that more people would think the same way that you do. I remember a couple of things that this will probably resonate with you, but about 20 odd years ago, I did some work with what was then Interpol in Sri
Yep.
Lanka and the Pacific Rim about sex tourism. And
Yeah.
um, walking along the beach in Colombo, I was offered children under 5, for the price of a pint of beer. And and of course you have to interrupt that, you have to stop that. It's just
Yeah.
terrible. But on the other hand, there's no welfare, or there wasn't then anyway. I don't know about now. There wasn't any welfare in Sri Lanka. So if a family had, say, 8 children and they farmed out the youngest, that was the only income that the others were getting to eat. And so you've
Yeah.
got this horrible dilemma, a little bit probably like the poppy fields in Afghanistan or wherever.
Hmm.
But I mean, it's this constant problem. So this idea of a universal
Yeah.
benefit that you mentioned, some of the
Hmm.
Scandinavian countries, it was serious, and Switzerland did for a while. They had a referendum on it, actually giving everybody in the country a fixed income.
Yeah.
It sort of died a death, but it keeps popping its head up now and again as an idea. I just wish somebody would try and see it through properly, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, it just takes someone with the right idea to put it forth, like in that proof of concept. I mean, you could change all of Cambodia by rolling that out.
Hmm. But do the
I mean, it
Cambodian
wasn't the
government want
Cambodian
that?
government either.
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay, listen, you're in Canada, right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's just take North America generally. I guess you've got such a lot of contacts through that continent, but you think that there's far too many small groups just starting up on the wave of kind of sympathy rather than in the need for proper organization. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. And if you're going to assess an NGO or a nonprofit, I mean, ask them what they have actually done. I mean,
Mm,
you're not going to eradicate the issue through awareness, right? Making people aware of the issue is not going to eradicate it. And when people say eradicate, it's
mm.
kind of far-fetched because there's always going to be trafficking.
Yeah,
It's just we have a way to prevent it and reduce it, but we are not going to eradicate it.
no.
It's an unreasonable expectation. So you got to watch what these NGOs say.
I think though, I mean, because you remember, you're speaking to somebody here whose
Mhm.
entire now, because I'm kind of just do this. Like, I want to be able to raise awareness, but by talking to people who are doing the business. But I wouldn't dream of actually getting stuck in myself anymore. I did that for decades before, but now all I want to do is allow people to have a voice. I think
Yes.
I think though so many people just really don't have enough. I mean, do you get involved with supply chain stuff? Because the food we eat, the clothes we wear,
Hmm.
the absolute abuse of mainly children in many cases to actually produce the stuff or create the stuff that we eat without knowing about the horrible stuff that they have to go through to satisfy us. That's the sort of
Yeah.
stuff I really think could be stamped on. If only governments would actually, those that actually have the money would actually say, right, no more money, until
Yeah.
you actually clean up your act.
Yeah. I've been getting engaged in some supply chain investigations.
Hmm.
And I mean, just
Could you
even
tell
this
us a little
one,
bit about that? Can you mention anything without breaking confidence?
I can talk about one of them. Uh, it's uh, it's the gold supply chain from Ghana to the UAE. I will
Yeah.
just say that. So, you know, let's say if they reported 1,800 tons of gold being shipped to UAE from Ghana. But
Okay.
on the UAE side, they're reporting let's say 2,800 tons. Okay, so
Huh?
Africa's reporting this much, and Ghana's reporting this much, and then UAE's reporting this much. Now there is a massive difference in the amount of tons. I think it was
Yeah,
about
double,
1,000 tons,
double. Yeah.
right? Yeah, so and then you got to also realize that real gold supply is being tainted with this illegal gold supply. So what happens in these illegal small mines? I mean, that's the way that these villages support themselves, but they're sending their kids, but their kids are no longer going to school. And they're getting neurological issues because of the chemicals used to separate the gold.
Okay.
Okay, and they're unsafe working conditions.
Yeah.
So not only is this real gold supply being enriched with the false, they're also underreporting, and they're also killing off the next generation of children
Yeah.
just so they can eat.
Yeah. Yeah. A tragedy, but not uncommon, sadly. I get it. I
Yeah.
do. Okay, so you get involved with that. How would you become involved with that? By kind of shining a light on it, working with law enforcement, talking international law? I mean, what involvement would you have?
There's some in government. There's some in just investigations that I'm doing against a person
Hmm.
that would then be uncovered. See,
Hmm.
it's kind of going down a rabbit hole in that case. So you uncover all these massive issues. It could start with money laundering. Well, where are they getting all this money? Okay, you trace it back to this gold mining in Ghana, but then you trace the difference in reporting and all the corruption in between, all the regulations and everything. You start finding holes in all this, and then you start finding people in government that are involved.
Yes.
So it,
Okay.
it may start with anything as a missing child, and this person's the one that took them, and then they have a lot of money, and then where's that extra money coming from? And then you start going down these rabbit holes and building a bigger picture.
Right. Law enforcement around the world is obviously, I suspect, very different shades depending which country you're standing in.
Yeah.
Um, do you have any optimism that law enforcement is improving?
They are in because you're having so many victims now.
Hmm.
So these victims actually want to make a difference. So they're becoming could be law enforcement or could be part of an NGO. So the more victims you have, the more you can either be going down a bad route, or you could be trying to advocate for the issue and trying to make things better.
Okay. Do you come
So
across
I
much
think that,
corruption?
yeah, that's where corruption comes from. Do you want
Yeah.
to make
Yeah.
things better? Do you want to make things worse?
Yeah. Yeah.
Corruption is massively getting worse, though, because they are the ones taking over the government.
Right. So yeah. So some of these organizations are so much bigger than the politics. They're
Yeah.
actually the ones that run the country, aren't they?
Yep. Oh, yeah. Or they control the politics
No,
and
they
they run the
control.
country
Yeah. Yeah.
and they run the law enforcement and sometimes they run the military.
How can
And
that
that's
be?
where we need to start stamping out the corruption.
How can it be stopped? I mean, how can it be challenged if an entire standalone nation, who's kind of got total kind of immunity, if you like, because they can't be challenged in their own borders. But I mean, how does the rest of the world deal with that? I mean, sanctions are so varied, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, sanctions only work so far. I mean, look at Russia, they're evading sanctions.
Well,
China's
yeah,
evading sanctions.
yeah,
All these other countries are evading sanctions. I mean, that way, I mean, if you did have the centralized government who could audit, who could detect these things and actually action them, then that's when things will start getting better.
right.
But I mean, it could also make it worse.
Well, I think history's shown us the number of countries that have had empires and have come and gone. I mean, Britain, America, Sweden, everybody. I mean, China is presumably the latest contender to be a world, an empire, isn't it, really?
Well, Earth could be an empire.
Earth could be an empire. Well, yeah, yes. That I mean, I take it from yeah, from what you were saying earlier. It would be great if everybody could work together.
Yeah.
I just get the impression that the United Nations is, to be honest with you, pretty toothless. It might be good at some things, such as humanitarian aid and stuff like that, but in terms of enforcement or in terms of actually getting people to stop doing criminal stuff, I mean, I can't see the United Nations as being very strong. Am I right,
Well,
or is that just an impression?
I've been finding, well, the reason that they stopped that stuff in Cambodia was that they started getting global pressure on them. And,
Hmm.
even the president there, prime minister, whatever it is in Cambodia, they were receiving a lot of bribes.
Yeah.
But when they put their foot down, Cambodia actually reacted and they raided about 10,000 venues. Did that stop all the criminals? No. They just put up shop somewhere else.
Yeah.
These illegal gambling facilities and all that. But
Okay. Well, I mean, that,
it's kind of
unfortunately, that's human nature, isn't it? I mean,
yeah.
I'm sitting in a country that so-called controlled sort of nearly two-thirds of the world land space
Hmm.
about a few hundred years ago. Um, and that doesn't really, and that's still kind of having aftershocks.
Yeah. Well,
So
people need
yeah.
to start providing more opportunities. I mean, if there were opportunities, you know, for people to get a job or open up a business and have their own home and not go hungry and not have to stress every day, I think the world would be a much happier and better place with less corruption and crime. People people usually turn to crime because they don't have any opportunities and it's all they know.
Are you involved with programs that try to achieve that even locally? I mean, because you're obviously
Yeah.
very well steeped in trying to kind of the forensic side of it, if you like, and working with law enforcement and trying to stop people being
Hmm.
abused. But the bigger picture that you've just outlined there, about trying to create, if you like, a more equal or caring society. I mean, do you get involved much with that kind of activity?
Yeah, I'd love to do it a lot more. And if I had more funding, the first thing I would do is uh, I'd go to Tennessee and visit Ben Owen and Jessica Owen and assist them with all their endeavors. Uh, they
I
have
don't know
by the
them.
block.
I don't know them. Could you
You
tell
know
us who
them.
they are?
Yeah, so they have by the block. So what they did, they bought the houses where the drug dealers were, so they got them out, and then they started fixing up all the houses and giving low income or subsidized housing to people, and they get them clothes. They just try to take care of the community where they grew up and where they didn't have the opportunities at the time.
So they tried
Puts
to
them in
clean up
different
their own
situations
backyard.
where
They
you have a
cleaned up their
different
own
perspective.
backyard. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, good. I will look
I
up them.
mean,
Give us some clues as to how to find them. I would very much like to see what they're doing.
yep, he owns We Fight Monsters and also Flanders Fields, and there's a Once American thing. I mean, they buy these houses, they fix them up. These were ones where they actually overdosed and died in, right?
Yeah, right.
And they fix them up, and it's very sentimental to them, and I can feel it in their posts.
But it's real life. It's real life progress, real life kind
Yes.
of evolution, if you like, in terms of humanitarian sort of work. I
Mhm.
mean, that's what we need. I mean, it might be a small scale, but by goodness, people need to have examples like that, don't they?
I mean, it's getting much bigger scale for them. I mean, they're even giving children jobs so they can make these charcuterie or cutting boards. I mean, they're expensive
Mm.
boards, but they're high quality and they're teaching kids new skills and they're
Hmm.
keeping them off the streets.
Yeah. I
Like
mean,
if I had the money, I'd put dozens of programs through them.
I've got a good friend who runs a charity in the north of Scotland, for youngsters and others who have got special educational needs or have real trouble or have had been in trouble or whatever. And what they do is they gather older bits of furniture from all around the city, the communities and everything, and they do it up and sell it. But
Yeah.
in amongst all of that, they get everything from tutoring to support to advice to skills to learning
Hmm.
to satisfaction, the whole thing that you've kind of just been outlining there that people need, actual sort of self-belief.
Yeah.
So
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Well,
yeah,
again, it's the opportunity thing. Once you start having opportunity, you usually don't go back to your old life.
no, well, no. Okay, look,
You create something new.
Larry, we've got about 5 minutes, I should think, and I really want to give you a chance. If people listen to this, right, who probably, let's say, the average person listening to this would be some kind of professional person, usually like working in frontline services, so whether it's law enforcement or social services or health or education, whatever. But they need to have a sense of what not what they could do, the eyes and ears thing. You used to be involved with organizations, if I remember rightly, that was had the kind of mantra follow the money.
Yeah. The
What
Anti-Human Trafficking
yeah,
Initiative. And now
yeah.
I still work with the National Child Protection Task Force, the Traverse Project, and that's traverseproject.org, or the Sentinel Foundation, foundationsentinel.org.
You've got so
I mean,
many
there's
links
tons of
there. You're
other
not going to get them all on my
organizations.
front page here. So, no, I mean, listen, I mean, what advice would you give? Say somebody's listening to this and quite rightly will be shocked by the numbers, shocked by the work you do, really concerned and so forth, and kind of thinking this is just so overwhelming, so mind-boggling. But what can your average Joe do, listening to, what advice would you give them?
Harm reduction. I mean, stop arresting these kids and stop throwing them in juvie. Stop, you know, you know,
Hmm.
you need to treat people better and give them opportunity. Otherwise, they're not going to get better. If you keep punishing them, you're just going to keep on getting worse and worse. I mean, that's what happens. And that's why some of these communities are just horrible.
Right, and they
Like
become
nobody wants to live
victims.
in these communities.
They're easy to become victims too, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, look, Larry, I mean, I don't want to leave it another 2 years if you didn't mind until I talk with you again, because it's great following your career, as it were, and following what you're doing. So maybe in less than 2 years, maybe I could come back if that's all right with you and see what's what. Would you be willing for
Yep.
that?
Let's do this at a minimum once a year.
Once a year. Okay, good.
Minimum.
No, I'll do that. I'll do that. But listen, I'm gonna have to stop now. And I've got your friend. I mean, I have got your friend coming up soon, Kareem Rajwani, who's very much
Yep.
into following the money, on the kind of account, the kind of forensic accounting side. And that'll be coming up in a couple of weeks. So and next week I've got the ex-children's commissioner for England, who's just written a good book about, for
Hmm.
teenage children, about uh, big ideas, if you like, sort of these children. And her book is a very, very good read, and it outlines all the sort of stuff. And in England, it's a big deal at the moment with knife crime, county lines, drugs, children being used as
Hmm.
couriers and mules and all sorts of stuff. I mean, I really want to kind of get everybody involved in this, but for today, Larry Cameron, thank you very much indeed for being a guest on the program.
Well, thanks for having me again.